Hi, friends. I want to share with you this beautiful teaching that is in the Talmud in advance of Shavuot. Shavuot begins tonight. And while the story is not directly related to Shavuot, it's one of my favorite pieces from the Jewish tradition, one of my favorite teachings and insights, because it meets us where we are. And I think it's particularly appropriate to this podcast. So there's this wild and magnificent story in the Talmud. And in the story, King David is establishing the foundations for the temple. And as he digs down, he digs so far that he goes into the Talmud, into the depths. And these depths are like the primordial depths, the waters that came into being during creation. If you remember in the creation story, the upper waters and the lower waters are separated. So these are the lower waters that are in the real depths. And this kind of reflects the ancient cosmology of the world. He's digging down to build the foundations. And he digs so deep down that he reaches the Tehomot, the primordial depths, and they rush up and they threaten to flood the entire world and to destroy the world of creation. And so according to the first version of the story, what happens is that King David sings the 15 songs of ascents, the 15 psalms of ascent, and the waters subside. The psalms of ascent are psalms that people would sing on their way up to Jerusalem. And these are traditionally attributed to King David. So that's version one, is the waters rise up and they threaten to destroy not only the temple, but just to flood and overcome the world. And King David recites these psalms, which he has composed, and the depths subside. So then the Talmud says, well, why are they called the Psalms of Ascent if actually they were used to make the waters descend? Then there's a different version of the story. The other version of the story that's offered is that actually what happened is the waters were flooding the world, and King David wrote the divine name, wrote God's name on a pottery shard and threw that shard into the waters of the depths. And those waters then subsided. But then it turns out that the waters subside so much that they threaten to eradicate all of the vegetation. There's too little water now for life to sustain itself. And so at that point, in this other version of the story, that's when King David recites the Psalms of Ascent. And as he recites these psalms, the waters reach the appropriate level where the temple can be built and where life can sustain itself, and there's balance and there's harmony. And I love this so much because to me, the waters of the depths, what they represent is an annihilation of the world, an undoing of creation, a total disordering that threatens to ruin everything that seems to be giving life. And what resonates with me so much in this story is that I think all of us from time to time have the sense that we're confronting the depths, that the world of order that we know seems at risk. Things seem to be falling apart in so many aspects of our communal life, our national life, questions about our well-being and the safety of our democracy, and the physical safety of the Jewish people, and just the fabric of our nation. We can look out into the world and be forgiven for thinking that it seems like a very, very dark time. But also, all of us face the depths in our own lives when it seems like things we've worked for, hoped for, dreamt about, planned for, fall apart. And there seems to be a great darkness sometimes that we're confronting. And what I love about this story, it's a beautiful act of creativity that is his first response, facing this annihilation of all creation. He takes an earthenware shard and he writes God's name on it, both acts of human ingenuity, and he throws it into the water and the waters subside. And so there's this beautiful act of creation in the face of the depths that brings back life. And then it's also an act of creativity of King David, the magnificent poet who composes these songs of ascents. And when recited, the waters come up. It's almost as though his creative act restores the order of creation itself. And for me, the resonance of this is that sometimes when we're faced with that darkness, when we're faced with what seems like insurmountable depths that might drown us, our tendency is to resist or to flee or to despair. But there's something in King David's act that suggests his ability to see that the apparent darkness is not the final state of the world, and that there's something in the human capacity to work with the depths, to stare into them, and to try to work with them through acts of creativity and acts of love that will moderate them such that the world that we live in can be a place of nurturing and goodness. So I wanted to share that beautiful story in hopes that when we're faced with the depths, we face them and accept them for what they are and try to find a space for creativity and flourishing as we confront them. And through our own courageous acts and through our own creative acts, we make this place and make our lives places of flourishing, hope, and bounty for all of us. Have a great Shavuot. And next week, I will be back with the normal format for this podcast, which is interviews and discussions with artists and creatives of all kinds. One final note, we are changing the name of this podcast from The Genesis to Art Lab. So the new name will be the Art Lab Podcast, conversations about Jewish art and culture. You should still be able to find it in the same place. If you have it saved in your podcasts, nothing should change except the title. But if you do find that you need to search for it, the new name is, again, the Art Lab Podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and happy Shavuot.